Hi, my name is David Knight, and welcome to the Easter collection of those amazing Psalms. Psalm 72, the true task of leadership. Psalm 72 is a royal psalm, a prayer for Israel's king, but I'm calling it the true task of leadership. And I'm including it in this collection of Easter Psalms because King Jesus rose from death to be King of all kings and the best model of leadership that you will find anywhere. And leaders today who practice the life-giving love of Jesus and the power of the resurrection bring to life the vision of Psalm 72. The whole Bible, including the Psalms, are inspired by God to teach us about God and about how to live life to the full, exposing our faults, correcting them, and showing us how to flourish in life. So, what is inspired in this psalm? First, it highlights the primary task of leaders. It is a prayer that the king will lead the nation with justice and virtue. Give the king your justice, O God. May he judge your people with righteousness and your poor with justice. It is a promise that such leadership will lead to prosperity and peace. May the land enjoy prosperity and the community be shaped by righteousness. This is the biblical vision of shalom, an atmosphere for full human flourishing. There will always be people in need in every community and also oppressors to exploit them. So this prayer is that the king will not side with the powerful against the poor, but show compassion towards the needy and to protect them. Verse 4, may he defend the cause of the poor of the people and give deliverance to the needy and crush the oppressor. That last phrase echoes God's ancient promise in the Garden of Eden that one of Eve's offspring will crush the serpent oppressor who led the world astray. And we'll see more about that in a minute. A society blessed with such a leader prays that his reign will last forever, as long as the sun and moon endure, as verse 5 and 15 and 17 praise, and that his influence would be so positive that people all over the world will be drawn to him, will be blessed as God promised to Abraham, and that distant kings will bow before him and bring tribute. Solomon and his descendants may have prayed this prayer or had it sung to them at their coronations to highlight their God-given role as leaders to embody the character of God with initiative, courage, justice, and compassion. But this lofty vision also reveals the deficiencies of sin-prone kings, especially when they fell prey to the corrupting lure of power and fame. As Israel's kings repeatedly failed, the dream began to grow of a truly righteous, God-anointed king. The Hebrew word for anointed was Mashiach, or in English, Messiah, a vision of a spirit-filled king who will rule justly and graciously as God's vice-regent, protecting the powerless and defeating oppressors. Rabbinical commentary shows that many understood this psalm not just as a prayer for kings, but as a messianic prophecy. And the New Testament is the story of Jesus as the fulfillment of this prophecy. As an infant, kings came from distant lands with gifts of gold, as verse 17 describes. In his life, he modeled grace towards the poor and oppressed. He welcomed outsiders. He healed and forgave. In his death, his body was bruised by the serpent oppressor's violence. But in so doing, he crushed the oppressor, as verse 4 says, and broke his power. In rising from death, Jesus literally fulfilled the vision of an unending reign that our psalm dreams of, where people from distant shores would bow in allegiance before him. He is not only a just king, but one who justifies every sinner who turns to him for mercy. This uniquely merciful risen Lord is the firstborn of many, treating us all as brothers and sisters, elevating us to be kings and priests, to exercise leadership in his behalf in whatever sphere of influence we find ourselves. to make our corner of the garden a thriving piece of Eden by mirroring the initiative and grace and servant leadership of Jesus. The way Jesus came to his disciples after his resurrection is an inspiring challenge to all of us who lead others in this pandemic. The disciples were locked down because of external threat and internal fears. Jesus took the initiative to break into their contracted world. "Peace," he said to them, "peace," reassuring them and replacing their fears with a new confidence and joy. All is not lost. Far from it. God is victorious. Life is full of hope. It took some convincing, as it does for many people around us today. But post-resurrection leaders can learn from Jesus how to break into the lives of people oppressed by fear and to bring a word of hope, a word of peace and Easter joy, a vision of the new reality that God has unleashed on the world in Jesus. Like the Psalm 72 king, our God-given task is to exercise leadership in our homes, our churches, our neighborhoods, and workplaces in the power of the resurrection, embodying the courage, the hope, the righteous character of God, and the grace of Jesus towards those oppressed by the devil. Let me suggest 3 spirit-guided ways to pray Psalm 72. First, to pray it as worship, echoing Revelation 5, thanking God for the kingdom of justice and joy under Jesus as Redeemer and King of the nations, whose reign will never end. Secondly, to use it as a prayer for the leaders of our world today, for civic and national leaders, for pastors and ministry leaders, for educators and media leaders who influence millions. Pray for wisdom to lead wisely and truthfully. Pray for the demise of corrupt and misguided leaders, and for the emergence of godly ones. Thirdly, pray that you can lead effectively in your sphere of influence. Read prayerfully through this psalm and adapt its vision, asking God to extend your reach and impact to achieve His purposes for you. Ask God to help you model the power of the resurrection in your life today. The Lord is risen. He is risen indeed. Happy Easter.